So the New York Giants are coming off a dreadful loss down in New Orleans, and they have no time to lick their wounds because the Philadelphia Eagles are coming to town on Thursday. What do you think about this matchup? Let's talk about it next on the Big Blue Breakdown live. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. I'm Paul Dottino. We're coming to you on a special night. The Giants have a Thursday night football game at home against the NFC East rival Philadelphia Eagles, and as a result, the schedule has been discombobulated. So we decided that we would go tonight instead of tomorrow. We usually go on Wednesdays, as you know, for Sunday games. So we're going to go tonight. We'll give you tomorrow another short edition of the 3 key matchups to watch. But of course, we'll wind up talking about quite a few of those situations and scenarios during the course of tonight's program. But we are going to be here tonight. I know the Yankees are also on. I get it. I understand. I'm purposely not going to look at that score for a little while. We're going to do a 1-hour show. If you guys continue to participate and I get a big enough audience, well, then we'll continue as we usually do and try to do a 90-minute program for you. But as it stands now, the thought is we will do a 1-hour program, and then we'll get you off, to the Yankee game so that you guys can hopefully watch that. Now, I will tell you this. If the Yankees are trailing after 1 hour, I'm much less likely to end the show because I will have nothing to look forward to when I turn on the television. Not that that will be the primary factor in closing down the program. It will really be up to you guys. If I get enough folks to want to stay in, we'll stay in for a full 90-minute show. All right, so that's where we stand now. We know the Giants are 1-4, a team that really should be 3-2, but they are 1-4 because they threw games away against Dallas and New Orleans on the road. We don't really need to say much about the Saints game. If you want to, I'll be glad to talk about it. But right now, it's very, very simple. 5 turnovers, there's no doubt. Brian Daboll was right about that. 5 turnovers in a row. 14-3 lead, about 8 minutes or so left in the second quarter, and then the roof caved in. Literally caved in on the Giants. 5 consecutive turnovers and the 14-3 lead where they're in complete and total control, and the game is going like textbook. It couldn't have been any better for the Giants. And then it all went bad, starting with the drop bomb by Darius Slayton. Then, of course, the fumbles, the interceptions, the failure to make plays above the X's and the O's. Everything that could go wrong did, except there were no serious injuries. Otherwise, the game was a complete disaster. So it's done. They are 1-4, and now they're home for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, what do we know about Philadelphia? Philadelphia is 4-1. Ironically, they've gotten to 4-1 despite having a very pedestrian offense. Here's what's interesting, folks, and I'm not excusing anybody, and I'm not trying to say anybody is better than somebody else, but I just want to give you a few facts that will probably blow your minds. They certainly did my mind when I was doing my usual weekly research for the upcoming opponent. The Giants' offense is tied for 16th in the NFL, right in the middle of the pack in first downs, which is indicative of the offense driving and moving and controlling the ball. Philadelphia is tied for 25th in the NFL in first downs. So yes, the Giants have accumulated 101 first downs on offense this year to Philadelphia's 87. It's not even close. Does that surprise you? Let me give you a little bit more. Giants are averaging 320 plus yards a game on offense, 19th in the NFL. Philadelphia's average offensive output is only 261 yards a game, 30th in the NFL. Let's keep going. Yards rushing per game. Giants 117, 13th in the league. Eagles 99.8, 25th in the league. Giants offense passing 203 yards a game. Eagles 161 yards a game. Giants are 18th. Philadelphia is 31st. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. 5 very significant key offensive categories. And yet, if I gave you those numbers and those rankings, you'd swear they would be reversed. But they're not. Now, why are the Giants 1-4 and the Eagles 4-1 when all of those offensive numbers heavily favor the Giants? Well, for one, defensively, Eagles rank 16th in the league at giving up 22 a game. Giants are giving up 25 a game, 22nd in the league. So defense is one reason why. But the top 2 reasons why the Philadelphia Eagles are 4-1 and the Giants are 1-4, despite the fact that the Giants offense has dominated the stats. I give you red zone offense. That is percentage of touchdowns scored inside the opponent's 20. The Giants are dead last in the NFL, folks, at 32%. It is an embarrassing number. It is a horrific number. The Philadelphia Eagles are 92% touchdown percentage when getting inside the 20. They're number 1 in the NFL. The Giants are dead last. Completely opposite ends of the spectrum. That is the first reason why these teams have opposite records. You got to get 7s. It's bad enough when you settle for 3s. The Giants have had 6 failed 4th downs where they got nothing, and a fumble, and an interception. Now, I always call it the scoring zone from the 30 in, because as you know, folks, I adapt to the game. And I believe anytime you get inside the opponent's 30-yard line, you should come away with points. These robotic field goal kickers now, they can make anything inside of 50 yards. So you get to the 30-yard line, that's a 48-yard attempt. So I don't go by red zone stats very much anymore to get inside the 20. I say if you get to the 30, you've got to get points. The Giants have been to the 30-yard line 22 times and only gotten points on 14 occasions. 8 times, and I just spelled them out for you, they've come away with 0 points on 8 different occasions when they've gotten to the 30 or further. That right there, that there is your primary reason of why the Giants are 1-4. The defense hasn't helped, but the red zone number, or in my case, the scoring zone number, it is scary bad. The second reason why Philadelphia, despite having lesser offensive stats than the Giants, they have done a marvelous job of taking care of the football. The Philadelphia Eagles are the only team in the NFL this year not to have lost a fumble. How about that? They have not lost a fumble through the first 5 weeks of the season. The only team in the league can say that. Giants have lost 3. We saw one return for a touchdown against New Orleans, didn't we? Philadelphia Eagles. I'm sorry. Let me correct myself. The Eagles have not thrown an interception. I got my notes here and I read it backwards. The Eagles are the only team in the NFL to have not thrown an interception this year. They only have one lost fumble, which means their one giveaway is the lowest in the league. So they're the only team not to have thrown an interception. They've only lost one fumble, which means they have one turnover. Lowest in the league. Giants have thrown 5 interceptions, lost 3 fumbles. That's 8 turnovers. They are -5 in ratio. Philadelphia is +4 in ratio. So, despite the fact that the Giants have a much better slew and sampling of offensive numbers than the Philadelphia Eagles and have been much more, well, I don't even know if I want to say about production, because ultimately points are production. The Eagles have been more efficient because they've been cleaner with the football and they've been deadly in the red zone. But all your other key indicator stats, and the one that I left out, and let me say this, it is in favor of Philly, but not by much. Third down percentage, third down conversions for Philadelphia, 38%, 23rd in the NFL. The Giants, 32%, 30th in the NFL. So that's the one key offensive stat that slightly favors Philadelphia. So when you folks out there talk about frustration, disgust, and aggravation, I understand. How do you think the Giants feel? They're going into this game with 4 different key offensive categories, all major, blowing the Philadelphia Eagles offense out of the water. And yet, they are 1-4 compared to Philadelphia's 4-1. It's been rough, folks. It's been rough. And of course, defensively, there's no question. As you look at the defenses, Giants defense has not lived up to its billing. Not at all. And I know, this past week was the second week in a row that they did a respectable job in the run game. I know. They're respectable against the Chargers. And they did really well against Kamara and Miller in New Orleans. But the back 7, much too soft, giving up too many important plays. And ultimately, just not playing well enough. So that's where it stands right now. Quickly, let me just give you some key injury notes for the Giants. Jermaine Illuminor and Darius Slayton did not practice today. Illuminor with a sore back, Slayton with the sore hamstring. Those are the 2 most important guys who did not work. 5 limited numbers, limited names, I should say. Beckham with a shoulder. Belton with a shoulder. Holland with a calf. Newbin with a groin. Phillips with a hip. Tracy with the shoulder. All 5 were limited today. Tracy says he's definitely on the upswing. He is day to day. He's feeling good. He's confident. Can't wait to play. But he does need to pass some tests that the trainers will give him before they'll clear him to get back on the field. It sounds like he's pretty much for sure going to play against Denver. Now, whether or not he makes it this Thursday against Philly, that seems kind of iffy yet. Jackson Dart still has a sore hammy, but he went through the practice today in full. Says he feels fine. There's no doubt he's going to play. So that's where the Giants' injury situation stands right now. Eagles-wise, they've got a very interesting injury report. And, you know, I'm not sure where to go with this one because Landon Dickerson has a bad ankle and he wasn't working in practice. And that's a big deal because he's their starting left guard. We know, former second-round draft choice. He's played really, really well for them. Is that going to be an issue or is it not going to be an issue? Now, if he doesn't go, they could either go with Brett Toth, former Army guy, or they could go with Drew Kendall, I suppose, the backup center who they drafted this year in the 5th round. There's always a chance they could move him over there. And then they always have Matt Pryor, formerly of the Chicago Bears. I mean, it just seems as though whenever the Eagles play, it doesn't matter who they plug in along the offensive line, it always seems to function very well. So, whatever. Saquon Barkley, been limited by a sore knee. Did have a 47-yard catch and run for a touchdown this past weekend in the loss to the Broncos. Jihad Campbell, starting middle linebacker, biceps injury. He's been limited. Remains to be seen what his situation is. And those are basically the important names to discuss. Nakobe Dean has been on the PUP list with the Eagles, but he's back at practice. There seems to be some question as to whether or not they might consider bringing him up to the active roster for the game on Thursday. That's where it's at with the injury report as of this afternoon. I will tell you, just in looking at Philadelphia, I do want to mention a couple of things. Obviously, Saquon Barkley has had a very tough go of it. He's got the sore knee, only 87 carries for 267 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. His long is only 17 yards, and he's averaging 3.2 yards a carry. Now, I don't want to jump to any conclusions. I don't want to say that the juice is starting to be squeezed out of the orange. We knew that when Barkley signed his long-term deal with Philadelphia, that he probably would not last the duration of the contract and would not be able to give them full value over the length of the deal. We all knew that. That's one of the reasons why it was widely acclaimed that the Eagles had overpaid for him. But he got them a phenomenal, historic season last year and a Super Bowl trophy. And I'm sure, rightfully so, they feel that it was worth it. But they better be monitoring him very carefully from this point forward, because I don't know how many superstar years are left in that body. And is he showing signs of wear right now at 3.2 yards a carry? Or is that just circumstances? His best game was against Kansas City, 22 carries for 88 yards and 1 touchdown. That's his best game of the season so far. Is he saving his best game for the Giants? Maybe so. Dexter Lawrence said today he doesn't care about how slow Barkley has been in the first 5 games of the year. He's like, I don't want him to break out against us. Says the secret is you got to clog the lanes at the line. Don't let him get to the 2nd and 3rd levels. We know that. We've seen Barkley play here before. We also saw him play for the Eagles last year. We all know what Saquon Barkley is and has been. It's going to be interesting to watch and monitor him over the rest of this season, because they made him a complete workaholic last year. They rode that pony as hard as they could to get to the post office, and it got them the Lombardi Trophy. And again, I'm sure they would trade the Lombardi Trophy for whatever years they have shaved off the back end of Barkley's career. I'm not saying it wasn't worth it, but this is something that people certainly needed to be aware of in Philadelphia when they signed him to that contract. Now, other guys who are complaining somewhat, A.J. Brown, 19 catches so far for only 194 yards and a touchdown. Against the Rams, he had his best game, 6 for 109 and a score. Devontae Smith beat up Denver for 8 catches and 114 yards, but for the season, 25 for 272 and 1 touchdown. Now, you want to talk about comparing? Wan'Dale Robinson has 23 catches for 267 and a touchdown. So basically, Devontae Smith and Wan'Dale Robinson have mirror stats. Robinson had the one huge game against Dallas, 8 for 142 and a score. Smith had one big game this past week against Denver. It's truly amazing. If I just took some correcting tape and covered up names and just gave you some of these numbers and some of these stats, you would be amazed. You really would be amazed to find out that, a lot of these stats show you there's either no difference in these offenses or the Giants are much better. But we know that is not true because of the red zone performances and the turnovers. We know that. So, anyway. All right. That's where that stuff stands. And of course, let's not forget the Eagles have a veteran quarterback and Jalen Hurts, who has won a Super Bowl. And the Giants are obviously, with their first-round draft pick, making only his 3rd pro start, Jackson Dart. Let's not diminish the fact that that's a big edge, obviously, because Hurts does have a championship resume. All right, that takes us through some of the incidentals. Let's just get right over to the chats. You guys see the activation. You got your phone calls. You got your video calls. You got your little QR code with the little duck over there in the corner. You can even use your cell phone to go there and get me that way if you'd like to. All right, let's get to your comments. After all, this is a live show. And much like the Big Blue Kickoff live show during the day on Giants.com, I was on today, by the way, with Lance. Just like that show, this is more about you guys than it is about me. I've already gone 20 minutes giving you the setup for some of what's going on. And I hope that I've surprised you with some of the facts. I mean, remember, folks, I tell you all the time, I stick to facts. Okay? Everybody can have opinions, but facts are only a one-way street. Facts are facts. And I didn't give you anything that's inaccurate. I gave you all accurate numbers. Those are all legit. And that's the reality right now. And so is the record. 1-4. Giants desperately need to turn this around. All right. Again, this is your show. Mikey C. When is Evan Neal going to play P-Dot? The Dart era needs soldiers. Go Big Blue. The offensive line has actually performed fairly well. I know. They've been the whipping boys for the better part of a decade. They haven't been that bad. I mean, I just gave you some of these teams' numbers. Giants have been sacked, let's see here, 14 times. That's the 11th most in the league. So right outside the top third. But remember, there was 6 sacks in the Chargers game. By the way, a game that the Giants won. They gave up 6 sacks. Crazy, right? So that means only 5 sacks in the other 4 games. Who's going to complain about that? Giants are averaging over 4 yards a carry. Now, that's only 20th in the league. Okay? They're 13th in the league in rushing at 117 a game, but only 20th in the league at just over 4 yards a carry. But these are improvements compared to what we've seen in recent years. So, I don't know. Are they anxious to make a lineup change with the offensive line when it's actually been much more functional? Remember? Functional, one of my key words. They've been much more functional than a lot of people thought they would be. And it's great to have Andrew Thomas back now for 1.5 games. Well, 2 games, actually. played against the Chargers and the Saints, played half a game against Kansas City. So you really want to make a change in the offensive line right now. I feel bad that Evan Neal has been buried and scratched every week. I agree with you. I'm puzzled by that. I thought he could give them more. It looked like it was going that way. So I'm not sure exactly why they've decided not to, except for the continuity of the 5 guys that they had last year. They seem to want to be playing them again. Remember, the Giants were 2-3 last year when Thomas went down. So this starting 5, okay, if you go 2-3 last year, we'll discount the Kansas City game because Thomas only played a half. So 2-3 last year, and now 1-1 this year. So this starting 5 offensive line, while playing a full game, is 3-4 over the last 2 seasons. Just something to ponder, folks. Like I say, facts can be very, very interesting if you're willing to sit down and think about them. Big Blue. Good evening, Paul. Eagles are going to be looking like this is their rebound game. Would be great to hear Cry Eagles Cry on Thursday night. Let's go Big Blue. Of course. There's a lot of people in Philadelphia complaining that this does not look anything like the Super Bowl team that won the Lombardi Trophy over Kansas City. They dominated the Chiefs. They destroyed them in the trenches. Right now, this is probably the most pedestrian 4-1 team you're going to find in pro football. But they're still 4-1. And again, when you're 92% on touchdowns in the red zone, and you have a combined 1 giveaway, 1 turnover, is it any wonder they're 4-1? Isaac Moore says, hey, Paul, we're here even with the Yankees elimination game. Let's go Yankees. Well, thank you, Isaac. I do appreciate you being with us tonight. I appreciate everybody who's tuning in tonight. Because I know it's tough. It's tough. I don't know where the Yankees stand, and I don't want to know right now. Bakester26 says, we need better coaching. Well, you need better everything. When you're 1-4, there's a lot going wrong. Okay? And even the coaches will take part of the blame for that. Aiden Fink says, Paul was right. The Superdome really is a voodoo. On to the Eagles. Let's bounce back. Prayers for John Mara and his family. Thank you for those sentiments, Aiden. Obviously, covering the Giants for 43 years, I've become very friendly with the Mara family. I have a great deal of respect for them and care for them. And quite honestly, the announcement by John Mara, the Giants co-owner, last week was a devastating announcement to all who know him. And we certainly wish him all the best, strength and prayers in his recovery, and for his family as well, who obviously are going through this ordeal with him, this battle with cancer. As far as the Superdome, yeah, it is a voodoo, house of voodoo. Giants are 4-10 since the Superdome opened in 1975. Okay? Yeah. That's a fact too. Okay? You want some more facts, Aiden? I really don't want to do this, but I'm going to have to. I'm going to have to do it. I really don't want to. Let me just go into my little bit of a little research project here. I did this earlier for the written copy that goes with this program when the show is over and they put the program on the archive so that people can see it on tape if they like. There's a written component that goes with it. Just basically gives you a quick kind of outline and preview of the status of the Giants going into the game. And I did a little bit of research, and I have, let's see here. I don't know where it is. I'm gonna grab it back. Let me see here. Oh, where is it? I believe the Eagles have won 7 of the last 8 regular season games against the Giants. Yes, that's the number I was looking for. And of the last 32 games, regular season, I'm not talking playoffs, because there have been playoffs. Since the 2008 season ended, all right, well, so we're going to start with opening day 2009. The Giants are 8-24 against the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah. 8-24 over the last 16 years in regular season games against the Eagles. They are 5-11 over those 16 years against the Eagles here at home. 5-11 is a lot better than 8-24. But 5-11 is still not very good. Again, the Eagles have owned the Giants. And if New Orleans' Superdome is a house of voodoo for the Giants, the Link is a hellhole for the Giants. Now, having said that, the Giants have won 3 of the last 5 meetings against the Philadelphia Eagles played at MetLife Stadium. And that's about the only positive stat that I can give you in this rivalry. The Giants have won 3 of the last 5 Eagles visits to MetLife Stadium. That's it. Nothing else positive about this series. Isaac Moore, if we're looking at this honestly, the coaching and in-season roster management has been very poor. Why can't we make adjustments or curb the bad mistakes that compound? NYC TV NYC says don't mean anything. I'm guessing he's talking about the Giants' dominance over the Eagles offensively. You're right. You're right. Ultimately, points. Points mean everything because points are how you win games. I find it incredibly ironic, though. And if there's anybody out there, please, I just thought I would bring those facts and stats to you because I thought it was very interesting. Is there anybody out there who honestly thought that the Giants would have better stats on first down, passing, rushing, and total yardage than the Eagles offense? Is there anybody out there who thought that that would be true after 5 games? I'm just saying. It's pretty amazing. I know it blew my mind when I started doing the research. And I suspect if you tell me that you expected that you would be telling a fib. I'm sure that you and 99.99% of anybody who was asked that question would tell you, oh, the Eagles' stats have to be better. The Eagles' offense is much better. It had all those numbers, you must have them reversed. They're not reversed, folks. Those are the real numbers. Look them up. Matt Seepersad, Shane Bowen should be fired for negligence. All that talent, no results. The defense is underachieved. Matt, there's no question. They played up to the back of their football cards against the Chargers. That was the defense that I've expected the Giants to put out on the field for the season, and it took them 4 weeks to do it. They did it in that game, and then somehow, they took another step back in New Orleans. I get it. 5 turnovers. Changed the whole complexion of the game, specifically the game flow, which seriously impeded the Giants' chances. Okay, I totally understand that. I'm not going to disagree or counter that. But the fact remains, even with those, Giants defense, they didn't make enough plays. They were underachieving in all but one game this year. Really. Isaac Moore says, yep, he threw good money at bad because of desperation. I'm not sure exactly who he's referring to. I guess he's referring to the front office and the GM, Joe Shane, but I don't know which players he's talking about. Universally, the Giants were thought to have had one of the best off seasons of any team in the NFL. They did extremely well according to the draft people, and the free agent crop, they signed over a dozen guys, and two of them, Adibo and Holland, were at the top of the market at their respective positions, and Chauncey Golston came off of the best season of his career in Dallas. He's been hurt for half of the year so far and has missed a bunch of games. They went and they rebuilt the entire quarterback room. Isaac, I'm sorry. I totally disagree with your statement, but that's okay because your statement's an opinion. It's not a fact. It's an opinion. Everybody can have opinions. Matt Seepersat, silver lining. We didn't lose on a 75-yard field goal. Just wait till the Denver game, Matt. Just wait till the Denver game. You just know that in Denver, their field goal kicker with thin air is going to wind up hitting some ridiculous bomb in a key spot. You just know it's going to happen. I'm already prepared for it. Big Blue says, Jerome Henderson was let go. Why? The secondary is offensive penalties and poor tackling angles. Big Blue, I do not know what went into Brian Daboll's decision to make that change. I know Jerome Henderson was very well liked and very well respected around the league and got a job immediately after he left the Giants. I personally like Jerome an awful lot. I know he had some guys in his secondary that also did not play up to their potential. And certainly right now, the current Giants secondary has guys not playing up to their potential. So what does that all mean? Chris Spires says, why are we afraid to play press? Giants scheme under Shane Bowen is, I believe, they're in the top 10 in blitz percentage. Okay? Last time I checked, before this week's game, they were, I believe, 8th in blitz percentage. So they've been aggressive in terms of sending heat at the quarterback. What they don't do very aggressively is play their back seven with great physicality. They're much more willing to chase and zone and play cushion, and that's the style that they've decided to go with. Obviously, Shane Bowen believes that gives them the best chance to win, gives them the highest percentage of success. So that's what he's doing. Personally, I think it's really difficult for someone who comes from a background, and I've always been defense first and very aggressive, very physical. That's just the background and the frame of reference that I come from. Everybody in the league has a different frame of reference, the type of football and the types of schemes that they will lean on. And I can't say that any one scheme is better than another, because it all depends on the scheme you have, with the players you have, the skill set they have to run the scheme, and then how you deploy the scheme. And then, are you able to make adjustments? Are you able to mix it up? I mean, for example, Steve Spagnuolo is so multiple. I believe, next to Bill Belichick, might be the greatest defensive coordinator of all time. And Steve Spagnuolo, for as aggressive as he wants his defense to be, he has a mixture, a Rubik's Cube of defensive philosophies that he will use in a game. And then if you want to compound that by week to week, he is constantly turning that block and coming up with all kinds of different things. A little of this, a little of that, little spice of this, little spice of that, right? He's got that sauce on the stove. He's got a little onion powder. He's got a little pepper. He's got a little salt. And you know, Steve Spagnuolo, he's the man. I'm not going to back down on my respect for him. Again, if they ever have a coordinator's wing in the Hall of Fame, he needs to be in there. But now Steve does not have one set standard defense. His scheme is truly multiple, not just week to week, but it's multiple series to series. So anyway, my point to you is this. It depends on your situation at that time with the talent that you have on the roster. This particular coordinator has a style, has a way, whether or not it fits this roster, fits the talent that's on this defense. Well, that's a question you're welcome to ask. And I guess we'll all have an answer, you know, by the time we get more of a body of evidence. Because you know what? At any given week, team can look better. Right? The Giants look better against the Chargers, right? We thought that was the defense that was prescribed for this club in 2025. They did it against Justin Herbert and the Chargers. And with the weaponry they have at receiver and running back, but their offensive line was banged up. See, the Saints also were supposed to have a similarly banged up offensive line. But yet the Giants underperformed. You can all point fingers as to where you think the blame belongs for that. But clearly something's not working. Isaac Moore says, I feel they were more physical in the LA game. They have to play smash mouth because they don't have high skill position players on offense. Again, Isaac, I come from the frame of reference that prefers that style. So would I do that? Sure. But I'm not the defensive coordinator. It's not my call. Isaac Moore says, sorry, guys, Guerrero killing us again. I'm afraid to even look. I don't want to know. Matt Seepersad says, Paul, you look tired this evening. Take a day off, man. Matt, I'm exhausted. I am really worn out and shot. But we've got a show to do, and the show must go on. So that's why we're here for you tonight. Thursday night game. It changes up the schedule. It compresses the schedule. You guys don't need to hear about my stress level or what I have to juggle. That's not important to you guys. You wanted a show because I commit to a show. I give you the show. I apologize for not being real chipper, but I'm just trying to do what I'm supposed to do because I feel responsible to you folks to bring you a program. Aiden says, Paul never gets tired. Well, sometimes I do get a little worn out. I won't say tired, but sometimes I do get a little worn out. Matt Seepersad says, did Bo Collins bury himself by not running through that route on the interception? He had his chance and didn't really capitalize. Neither did Hyatt. Made the wide receiver group seem less than sufficient. You're right, Matt. I gave Bo Collins a drop on that one play. I called it like I saw it. I gave him a drop. I didn't give Hyatt a drop. There was the one heavily defended pass downfield where there was hand fighting going on and it was knocked away. I didn't give him a drop for that, but I agree with you in that both Collins and Hyatt had opportunities. They were in there in the fourth quarter. You know, Slayton was down with the hammy, and neither guy really made a step-up play. It certainly did not help the perception of the Giants' wide receiver room. There's no denying that. None. Now, what do you do? We had people calling today on Big Blue Kickoff. One guy in particular called up and he's screaming, why didn't they go get a high-priced receiver? Well, guess what? With salary caps as they are, Giants were not going to be able to get a high-priced receiver. And when you consider the free agents who were available during the offseason, the list wasn't great. And on top of that, I mean, think about this. Darius Slayton was the second highest paid free agent receiver in the marketplace, and he wound up being a retention. That tells you about the crop. And then once the Giants started filling in things, they paid Adibo, they paid Holland, they paid Golston. They went and they signed Hudson as a swing tackle because everybody said they got to get help on the offensive line. Well, they went and they got a swing tackle. All right, they got the swing tackle before they drafted Bo in the 5th round. They didn't know they were going to be able to get somebody that good in the 5th round. As it turns out, they probably didn't need Hudson, right? The way Bo has performed, they probably didn't need Hudson. But at the time, you didn't know that. So you had to get a swing tackle. So they had to go pay Hudson. They had to go pay Russell Wilson because they needed to go get a quarterback with an established resume, not knowing if they were going to be able to get themselves a QB or if they'd even want to draft a QB, depending upon how the draft fell. And now, if you look at the receivers on the street, how many people call up shows or come on the internet and say, go get OBJ? Well, what happened today, folks? What did we find out today? Odell Beckham Jr. admitted on a podcast that he has to serve a 6-game suspension from the NFL for being tested positively for PEDs last year when he was with the Miami Dolphins. Okay? So now, if I read correctly the story, they said he's not eligible to play this year until like week 12. I mean, I love people who complain about not getting another star receiver. Gabe Davis was another one that the internet world was crying for several weeks. What is Gabe Davis doing? Well, he went on several visits, couldn't get a deal, and then finally went back to Buffalo and signed a practice squad contract. If Gabe Davis was such an answer, wouldn't he have gotten a spot on somebody's 53? No. He wound up with a practice squad contract with the Bills. Sometimes people have to really understand context and the environment and the atmosphere and what else is out there before they start to make crazy suggestions. In any event, as far as the Giants wide receiver core is concerned, if they want to dip into their practice squad, I'm sure that little Jordan Humphrey is probably the first guy that they would look to bring up if they decide they want to do that. Or will they keep going with Collins and Hyatt for another week? I don't know the answer to that. None of us do. But little Jordan Humphrey, in my opinion, is clearly the next guy up off the practice squad if they want to add a receiver for Thursday's game. Sean Jackson says, good evening, Paul, and please try to encourage me as I'm looking at the Giants' remaining schedule before their bye week. I'm struggling to find Giants wins, maybe Bears or Pats, and prayers for Mr. Mara. Sean, it's not about looking at the rest of the schedule. It's about looking at each and every week individually. Look, I'm not talking out of school when I tell you very few people expected the Giants to beat the Chargers. Now, I very much expected them to beat Dallas, and they outplayed Dallas, but they lost the game. I very much expected them to beat the Saints. Well, they played horrible football and just got themselves beat. So, what do we really know about this team right now? Not a whole lot that's good, because twice, they've given away games for no reason to a team that they are better than. It is what it is. So, Sean, I'm not interested in what's going to happen the rest of the schedule. I'm interested in week to week. I know this. This Philadelphia Eagles team is not the same team that won the Super Bowl. They are somewhat scuffling, and they've taken a step back. I'll go as far as to say to you, if the Giants played their best ball, didn't have any turnovers, and didn't drop any passes, and just played really good, sound, fundamental, mistake-free football on Thursday, I'd give them a really strong chance to win this game. I would. But what are the chances they're going to do that? You've seen them now for 5 weeks. Penalties, turnovers, drop passes. These are all things that have to go away. Because if they don't go away, they can't even beat a team like the Saints. Never mind the Philadelphia Eagles. That's where it's got to start. Get rid of the penalties, get rid of the turnovers, get rid of the drop passes. Get rid of those 3 things. Now you've got a chance to start winning games. Isaac Moore says Slayton is hurt now. Yes, he is. Isaac says going to have to go 2 tight end sets, double wide. You know me. I'm always in favor of a heavy formation. Double tight end set worked real well in the first half against the Saints, didn't it? I told everybody before the season, if Jalen Hyatt did not emerge as the 4th wide receiver, the Giants could go with a double tight end set. And what happened? Bellinger and Johnson wound up getting a larger share of the targets. Johnson even caught 2 touchdown passes in New Orleans. If you've been watching this show since the summer, you knew that that was always one of the options the Giants could go to. The question was when or if they would try it, but it's been an option all along. They certainly could do it this week. And quite frankly, I probably would advocate it. Sean Jackson says, Paul, the 22 Giants didn't beat themselves, but since 22, there have been too many games the Giants have beaten themselves. I'm hoping Brian Daboll can redeem himself and coach above the current mess. Sean, you're right. For the most part, the 22 Giants played clean, fundamental football. Yep. See, if you're a team trying to climb out of the quicksand, Sean, the first thing that you have to do is clean up the self-inflicted wounds. You can't do anything else until you clean up that mess. Get halfway out of the quicksand. At least get to belt high. Instead of being up to your neck, get to belt high. Once you get to belt high, now you got a chance to grab the rope. And maybe you can pull yourself out. But what have the Giants done? They've played themselves into neck-high quicksand. Isaac Moore says, rebuilt the quarterback room for what? Just to throw dart in week 4. Defensive players are not consistent. I don't know. Maybe it's scheme 2. Well, here's the thing about the quarterback room. You won't know the intangibles and the effects that Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston have had on Jackson Dart until he continues to move on in his career. He's got a full rookie season to go yet. And if you had been around practice and been around these guys all the time as I have, you would know that Dart has absorbed an awful lot. He absorbed an awful lot from Tommy DeVito too, who during the summer in the training camp was his best bud. It's universally accepted throughout the Giants locker room that Russell Wilson has been a great influence on the whole team, not just Jackson Dart. And Jameis Winston has also been a great influence. Now, those intangibles have not necessarily turned into ingredients to win games. So I understand that. You can talk all you want about intangibles until the Giants win. Those intangibles are hidden behind the curtain. But at some point, Jackson Dart, during the course of his development, whether it's this month, next month, the month after that, or maybe even next year, everything that Jackson Dart and some of these younger players have soaked in on a daily basis from veterans who are really good leaders and very, very positive influences in the locker room, Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson, those intangibles, when the Giants start to win games and when these young players are part of winning teams, I guarantee this is not a rumor. The intangibles that they were taught by those guys will be quoted, will be uncovered, and we will all learn that those intangibles were a part of the road to success whenever that road comes. Right now, those intangibles are invisible because the record won't allow them to show themselves. So, Isaac, I'm sorry. Your comment is a bit off the mark. Allison says, Paul, listening because I apparently like to torture myself. I do this show because I like to torture myself too, Allison. Who else would subject themselves to an hour of comments, calls, and sometimes 90 minutes of comments and calls for a team that has been incredibly frustrating? Pete F. Their second or third and 10-plus yard defense play is too soft. This has been a problem most of the year. Pete, as I said before, the back seven on defense gives a lot of cushion and a lot of room. It would not be my preferred style. Let's just say that. So I appreciate your comment. Nonetheless, the truth of the matter is, whatever scheme you're playing, the players still have to make plays. And there is such a thing sometimes as a play happening, the player's in a scheme, and then he sees something, and then he just makes a play. And we talk all the time, or at least I do, about players making plays above the X's and the O's, which basically means, the translation from Dan Reeves, who taught me this way back when in the 90s, a play is designed to do this. It's designed for a 3-yard gain off right tackle, or it's designed for a 12-yard pass completion. That's what it's designed for. But now you make a play above the X's and the O's, you turn that 3-yard run into an 8-yard run because you break a tackle, you juke a linebacker, and you make it a better play than what it was designed to be. In the passing game, maybe the pass was meant to go 12 yards, okay? But you make a sensational stab, then juke the defensive back, and you turn it into 20 yards. That's making a play above the X's and the O's. Or for that matter, winning a 50-50 ball. When a ball is thrown and it's clearly up for grabs and anybody could catch it, and you make the play, well, the way the ball was thrown, it's a 50-50 ball, which means either guy's got a legitimate right to catch the ball. But then your guy makes the play above the X's and the O's, and he gets the ball and leaves the other guy in the dust. The Giants don't make enough of those plays. That's part of the problem with this team. They need more plays above the X's and the O's. On defense, it's not enough to be in the area of the receiver or the tight end or the running back. That's not enough. The scheme is designed or the play is designed, you're going to guard this guy, or if he comes into this area, you're going to pick him up. Well, fine, but don't just do that. Don't just do what the play's designed to do. Go knock the ball free. Punch the ball out. Cause a fumble. That's a play above the X's and the O's. Linemen, get your hands up. Tip that ball in the air like Dexter Lawrence did against the Chargers and intercept it. That's a play above the X's and the O's. You follow? Wide receiver makes a catch, 15 yards downfield. He makes a nice play. But just when he's about to hold on and make that step, you make a play above the X's and the O's, and you karate chop that ball out of his hands before he makes the football move, and the official goes, incomplete. You were there, you defended him, he made what he thought was a nice catch, but you knocked it out, and now it's an incompleted pass. Make the play. It works on both sides of the ball. Make the play. The Giants haven't done nearly enough of that. In fact, they've hardly done it at all. Matt Sieper said, how do we feel about Deonte Banks returning kicks on such a regular basis now? He's actually really good at it. He looks more comfortable this week. Had a nice one in the game. He did, over 40 yards. Run a big risk at hurting our depth in a bad secondary. Right now, that's the one unit that the Giants are really happy with. They're doing really, really well on special teams. You know? It's really, really good. Really, really good. But hasn't been enough to offset the offensive and defensive woes. All right, where are we going here? Aiden Fink, how do you feel about Holland and how Holland and Adibo have played? Haven't enough talk about them, but none of these defensive free agent signings have impressed to this point. Well, you're right, Aiden. It's not been good enough. They were top of the market at corner and at safety. And especially Adibo has been known as a ball hawk. He's been known as a guy who gets interceptions, who gets his hands on the football. And let me just check the numbers. Thus far, I want to make sure I got this right. He's got 4 passes defensed, and of course, no interceptions. Drew Phillips, who I'm a big fan of, I thought last year he could have been on the All-NFL rookie team. He's been somewhat inconsistent this year. He's gotten called for some penalties, which have been important. And he's also given up some catches. Then again, he's also got a couple of interceptions, and he's also made some very nice plays. But Phillips was a draft choice, and he's still on the team. That's a little different than going out and signing a big bucks free agent. And Holland has been rather quiet so far this season. Adibo's made a few plays, but there are others that I could swear he would have made when he was with the Saints that he hasn't finished off here. I like him. He had a really, really good training camp and preseason, and I expected an awful lot. See, my standard for Adibo is really, really high. He hasn't lived up to that during the regular season so far. So I agree with your thoughts, Aiden. Supposedly steals in free agency, says Aiden Fink, but with the price, this defense has underachieved, as you previously mentioned. That is true. Isaac comes back, underachieving is a culture problem. Well, culture is not a word that in my vocabulary. I don't believe in that word. Isaac, I do believe they've underachieved, so I agree with you. It's a nouveau thing to say in sports. It's been this way now for several years. People say, oh, got to change the culture. Oh, it's a losing culture. Oh, it's a winning culture. People don't even know what in the world that means. They just throw it around and use that word when a team has a good record or a bad record, and automatically the aspirin is, oh, got to change the culture. I'm not directing this at you, Isaac, because unfortunately, this is the way the sports fan is today. The society says immediately that's the catch-all word. Okay? Intangibles. Intangibles. As I've said, many of those intangibles are very, very invisible, especially when a team is losing. But intangibles are the things, if you've got good intangibles, which is about selflessness, leadership, dedication, focus, intensity. Those are all factors. Those are all intangible factors that all play into the stew. And if you want a really good Italian sauce, right, you got to have all the right ingredients, and they got to simmer just at the right temperature for just the right amount of time. Well, that's the deal with these intangibles, okay? Now, the Giants have a lot of really good intangibles. They really do. But they're invisible right now because the record's 1-4. Anyway, I hope I've better identified that for you, Isaac. Please, again, you're one of our regulars. Don't get caught up in the catch-all term. That culture term is just, it is such a throwaway, lazy term. And I really wish that the media would get off of it, because it's just a very shallow, meaningless term that they simply throw around when a team has a winning or a losing record. I've made my statement. I'm moving on. You'll never hear me use that word. Allison says, weird question. Is Russ still a captain, and does Dart get a say in what happens in captain meetings? Yes, Russell Wilson is still, and Russell Wilson has gone out for the coin toss, as a matter of fact, too. I've seen him do it. Does Dart get a say what happens in captains' meetings? To my knowledge, there was not a revote, and Dable has not named Dart a co-captain. So I suppose the answer there would be no, he does not. But I tell you what, Allison, I will check into that for you. But I do not believe, and you're saying you cannot tell. I agree with you. I don't know. I just don't know. I will check on that. I will ask, but I don't believe that Dart has captain's privileges. And I don't think that, even though he's now become the starting quarterback, I don't think that Dable is going to just give him a C, or for that matter, do a revote. I don't think that's going to happen. CTK 7389, you're demanding logic from a fan base that has had to sit back and watch this horrific product for a decade. Well, you know what, CTK 7389, I always profess logic. I know emotions and frustration always drown out logic. I do understand that. But because I've been covering the Giants for 43 years, and I've been in this market forever, and I understand Giants football, I understand the foundation of the franchise, I understand the foundation of the fan base. I've seen over the years what the demands are. I've seen what the expectations are. I understand all of that stuff. I've lived it. And I still believe that logic is still the best way to go, because complaining and crying over spilt milk is going to do you no good at all. It just doesn't help. I've said this before. When we started this program a year and a half ago, I made it clear. Anybody who just wants to scream, complain, rant and rave, unless you just want to do it to get it off your chest and don't expect any answers, well, that's fine. Sometimes people just need to blow off steam, and that's fine. I'd rather that those people call up the local radio stations and blow off steam there, because my forum is about logic, it's about reality, it's about facts, it's about rationale, it's about being creative and figuring out what are the realistic options, and if any of the realistic options are actually going to give you a chance to see something better. That's what I'm about. I live my life as a glass half full guy. This isn't just about the Giants. I get up in the morning and I'm happy to get up in the morning. Even if it's raining out, I'm happy to get up in the morning, and I'm looking for something productive to do each and every day. Because I happen to believe that it's easier to go through life a glass half full, which, by the way, if the glass is half full, it means you do recognize the glass is half empty. It just means that you prefer to swim in the glass that's half full. You see what I mean? I just find that life is easier that way. It's less frustrating. It's less negative. And it makes things much more tolerable. So, do I recognize the negatives of the Giants? Absolutely I do. I've talked about them on this program now for 5 weeks. I've told you when guys drop passes. I've told you about the penalties. I've told you about the turnovers. About the players who haven't lived up to their football card. Those are facts. Those are negatives. Those are things from the glass half empty. I acknowledge those. Those are real. But it doesn't do much good to dwell on those things. It's better to be in the glass half full and try to figure out, where do you go from here? Is there anything salvageable? Is there anything good? Is there something that can possibly turn into something better? That's productive. That's just how I feel about life in general. That's how I look at everything. When people say, oh, you have blue-colored glasses on the Giants, you're always talking positively. Well, I'm a positive person. This isn't about the Giants. It's just the way I'm built. I'm a glass half full guy. I'm a Mr. Fix-It guy. Always looking for a solution, always looking for an answer. Don't tell me what can't be done. Don't tell me what's broken. Tell me what can be done. Tell me if there's a way to fix it. So CTK7389, that's just the way I am. For people who want to thrive in the glass half empty and want to scream, yell, do nothing but complain, do nothing but scream out loud and offer ridiculous, non-factual based options or viewpoints, there are a lot of other shows you can go to, including radio shows, where hosts who don't know very much about pro football will be very glad to entertain those types of conversations. I'd like to believe that this program is for the more intelligent football fan who wants to try legitimately to see if there are any rational, logical options, viewpoints, and items to discuss. Now I get off my soapbox. But I hope I answered your question. You asked, I answer. You guys will see the chats are over here on the right of your screen. I don't duck the chats, even with the people who want to be negative and who want to go to the glass half empty side. I try my very best, unless they're being ridiculous. I address them. I don't duck them. I try to show everybody the respect that I'd like to think they deserve. Allison says, I cannot begin to tell you how glad I am that this OBJ thing is over. Yeah, well, you didn't have to field a whole bunch of calls and questions and stuff about him in the last few weeks. So, yes, Allison, I'm with you. Matt Seepersad, send a 6th-round pick to the Bills for Curtis Samuel. I'm sure they'd let him ride. We can definitely use another almost washed 29-year-old wide receiver. You want Curtis Samuel? Do you think he is a step up from what we have right now? By your second, or let's see, your third sentence here, we can definitely use another almost washed 29-year-old receiver. That says you believe that he blends in with what we have. And that's not the idea. When you make a trade, the idea is you're going for an upgrade. So that doesn't necessarily work. Isaac Moore says, definitely needs scrappy receivers. Look, I'm going to go back to the statement I made before. Make plays above the X's and the O's. Make plays for your quarterback. Make plays for your secondary by knocking the ball down. Secondary, make plays for your defensive guys up front by forcing an incompletion, by grabbing an interception, so that those guys can get off the field with you. I get it. Trust me, Isaac. There's enough of stuff that this team needs. I'm not picking on you. But to everybody out there, I get it. The Giants have made a lot of very poor and negative plays. There's no denying that. You don't need me to tell you that. You know yourself. You've seen it with your own eyes. So, again, why sit around and complain about spilled milk? Doesn't help anybody. Allison says, lack of discipline and consistency equals a coaching. Coaching is a big problem to me. Sorry, from my point of view, this is where I sit right now. I know you can't really speak to that. Allison, the problem is, I don't know how you blame a coach when the quarterback simply drops the ball in New Orleans while he's running. He knows he's a runner on the play, doesn't tuck the ball away, and drops it. I don't know how you blame a coach for a flea flicker that clearly would have worked had the ball not been slightly underthrown and the receiver did not make enough of an effort or move to make a play for his quarterback to get the ball. I don't know how you blame the coach for a fumble at the other team's 15-yard line that they pick up and run 80-something yards for a touchdown. I also don't know how you blame the coach for an early bomb on a post pattern when the ball goes right into the receiver's two hands, right through both. Yes? Is everybody to blame for this 1-4 mess? Sure. There's going to be blame to go around to everyone. Jackson Dart took accountability for himself the other day and said, blame it on me, I'm the quarterback. I've got to get everybody up to par. Very admirable of him. In fact, there, for I guess it was for Isaac before asking about spending money on the quarterback room, there's the maturity and the leadership quality that Jackson Dart, in part, learned from Wilson and Winston. How you going to deal with it when you guys do on the field? What do? You don't sell out your teammates. Everybody saw who fumbled. Everybody saw who dropped passes. Everybody saw who gave up big plays, right? We all saw it. But the quarterback comes out and says, I'm the leader of this team. Blame it on me. I take accountability. It's on my shoulders. There's a great example, Isaac, of why you bring in a Winston or a Wilson. because you want this kid to learn the right intangibles as he goes step by step through his rookie season. And this kid has checked an awful lot of boxes. I just told the Saints radio crew during their pregame show, they had me on. And I told them, I said, guys, this Jackson Dart, he's checking all the boxes, and he's a heck of a lot more mature than most rookies coming into this league. And as a number one pick and a quarterback in the New York Football Giants in the spotlight, which is 10 times hotter than most, and then 10 times again hotter than that because the team is in the quicksand, and this kid faces all of it and is so poised, so professional, and so respectful in his demeanor and his work habits, says an awful lot about him and the quarterback room that the Giants built for him. So, yes, Allison, you're right. Coaching does take a percentage of this. But players have to take a big percentage of it too. They're the ones between the lines. They're the ones not just making the plays that they're told to make, but they're not stepping up above those X's and O's and making any of those plays either. And if you want to be any good, you have to make some of those plays. Matt Seepersat, I saw something that said only 2 teams have 100 losses in the last 10 seasons, the Jets and the Giants. I thought I saw a graphic about that, Matt, as well. Indeed, it's been rough. The good news for the Giants, though, they've been to 2 playoff spots during those years, 16 and 22. They won a road playoff game in 22. Jets have the longest non-playoff streak in the NFL. Longest active non-playing streak in the NFL. So at least there's that. You'll always have the thrill of watching that playoff victory in Minnesota. If you were not there, you had the thrill of watching that game on TV. And I'm pretty sure that most Giants fans who watched that Vikings game had a really good time that day and enjoyed the heck out of watching that game. Just a hunch, but I think you probably were. MB Goblin. Interesting. Wonder if that's a reference to Spider-Man and the Marvel Comics character. P-Dot, how many years are we supposed to give the coaching staff and front office to build a winning Oh, it's that C word. Not going there. New England, Indy, Jacksonville all turned it around and basically won off season. MB Goblin, I don't know about the magical elixirs that just automatically change a team's record. But before you get too carried away about New England, let's see what their record is at the end of the year. You know, I will say this. I thought Jacksonville was a much better team this year, and I thought Indianapolis was a much better team this year. And I've always believed in Daniel Jones, as you guys know. His last year with the Giants last season, the final month of the season that he played before his benching, he played very poorly. His play deteriorated because of the circumstances, and it was best for him to move on because it was never going to work here at that point. The toxin that had been built up around Jones had beaten him down to the point where he could not be the quarterback he was supposed to be here. He was going to need a change of scenery. And once he got that, I knew he would play well because he's a good quarterback. There's no question about that. I'm never going to move off of that. And I know I've taken a beating for 3 years about that. Well, guess what? He looks pretty darn good now, doesn't he? When you know talent, you know talent. Daniel Jones has talent. But anyway, enough of that. Isaac Moore, Washington cleaned house. Now look at them. They also wound up getting extremely fortunate with Jaden Daniels as a rookie, who in the game's most important position wound up with a boom of a rookie season. You know, that is one thing, unfortunately, the Giants weren't unable to do, right? Because Washington's line did a decent job, and they protected Daniels last year. He also got very lucky in a lot of ways, though they pulled out a bunch of games out of the hat in the final moments, they were very, very lucky. But at the same time, he also did add a tremendous amount of talent to the position. The Giants were caught because of the salary cap situation. They were caught in a bad situation with Daniel Jones, and that also extended the problem. That's just part of what happened. I think it's important to note, right, that Washington won 4 games the year before. And then boom. So, yes. Can it happen? Yes. There can be a quick turnaround in this league with the right set of circumstances, some of which you have under your control with who you re-sign, who you add as a free agent, and who you pick in the draft. That is true. Some things you have under your control. Other things you don't have under your control. For example, the draw of the schedule. That is not in your control. The players who get hurt. Malik Neighbors is out for the season. That is not under your control. Andrew Thomas missed the beginning few games. All-pro left tackle. That is not under your control. Giants got three linebackers hurt, in the middle linebackers, right? They went through McFadden. They went through Muasau. They had to go to pick up Bozeman off the street at one point a couple of weeks back. That was not under the Giants' control. So some things were under their control. Some things weren't under their control. You put all these things together, you have an equation, and you say this, you add it all up, and then at the end of the year, you come to some conclusions. And that's fine. That's fine. Everybody gets that. And whatever will be, based on all of the evidence that was put forth on the table. MB Goblin. I still hold out hope for Dable, and I really hope some of the players, but it's hard to think we're making progress when the players continue to see underperformance from key players. I understand. Arnold Stevenson, Freedom. Good evening, Paul. How about the tight ends this week? They were above the X's and the O's. Go Giants. A really nice touchdown catch on the second grab by Theo Johnson. Now, I expect the Giants tight ends to play well. But yes, you are right. Let's put a gold check next to Theo Johnson. The second touchdown catch on the seam pass, that was absolutely a play above the X's and the O's. It was contested, and he would not let them knock it out of his hands. He would not let them wrestle it out of his hands. I stand corrected, Arnold. The Giants did have a play above the X's and the O's in New Orleans. Theo Johnson's touchdown catch. Yes. Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. I wish they would have more plays above the X's and the O's. Scott Young says, you called it on special teams with the beginning of the year, said the Giants would be good on special teams for the rest of the team. Yeah, you're right. That was part of the plan. And that has worked very well. The Giants are top 5 in the NFL in both punt. They're number 1 in punt coverage. They're number 4 in kickoff coverage. And Jamie Gillen's having a nice year punting the ball, too. Of course, once again, what can't you control? Graham Gano. Kicker gets hurt again. My goodness. Unbelievable. MB Goblin, the secondary and receivers have been the biggest struggle for our team. We have receivers not rising to the occasion and holding on to the ball, and DBs that can't hold on to the player. Let me give you a number, my man. MB Goblin. Drop passes for the Giants. Last year it was 40. Okay? That was the number last year. And this year's number right now, according to my chart, is 12. They have 12 through 5 games. 7 of the 12 were first down throws either at or beyond the sticks that would have converted the first down. 7 of the 12. You think that doesn't make a difference? You think that doesn't hurt the team? See, folks, I could tell you, I could share negative facts with you because I have the facts. It doesn't help to bellyache about spilled milk. I can tell you facts. 7 first down throws were dropped so far through 5 games. That's not good. MB Goblin. Sorry, meant DBs that hang on to players. The PIs have been a killer. Sure they have. Giants are one of the top 10 teams in penalties, too. Matt Sand says, going to bed, good night. Don't blame him. Fun fact, Jamar Chase has more solo tackles than Micah Parsons this year. Okay, I'll take your word for it. I don't know that to be a fact, but if it's true, I guarantee you that Jamar Chase doesn't have nearly as many quarterback pressures or quarterback hits as Micah Parsons. How about that? And I don't even have to look that up. Isaac Moore says Yankees lost. Well, it's only 9:30 and the game started at 8 o'clock. So if they played this game in an hour and a half and the Yankees have already lost, then that means it was a rain-shortened game, and I don't think that happened. Allison says, Paul the philosopher. I really hated to go there, Allison, but we had a few of these comments today that just made me have to pull out the old philosophical workbook. I went into this when we started the show a year and a half ago. I made it very clear to anybody who wanted to jump on board that that's the way it's going to be here. You know, that's the way it's going to be. It's a certain style of forum that we have here. We're about productivity. We're about finding logic and rationale. We're not just about setting off hand grenades. It's mindless. It doesn't do anybody any good. MB Goblin, a positive for me. Our offensive line has looked pretty solid with AT back in the lineup. That's Andrew Thomas. And rookie Marcus Bowe having the ability to get some good reps. And Darius Alexander had a pretty good game. Yes, Darius Alexander has been getting more snaps the last couple of weeks. And he's starting to show something. Another one of those rookies who is being brought along. I'll get a couple more comments in here because I really want to sign off. Pete F. Paul, do you see this coaching staff making adjustments on the fly? It looked like their pass rush in New Orleans was stacked on the quarterback's left. Penetration forced the quarterback to roll to his right. Pete, I think the hard thing is, he also adds, it makes his throws easier. If they forced him to move to his left, it was a tougher throw for a righty quarterback. Actually, Pete, to be honest, I'm not in the locker room at halftime, so I don't know specifically how many adjustments they make or what types of adjustments they make. I think what the Giants do more than anything, they make adjustments based on game flow. That's from looking at the games and then looking at the tapes. That's what I see more so than making halftime adjustments. I see game flow adjustments. For example, they did a bunch of double tight ends in the first half, right? They moved the ball well. They got the 14 points. Everything was going by the textbook for the Giants. They did try to open up with the one bomb, right, to Slayton, but then everything collapsed. So now the Saints get the lead. They wind up 16-14. They scored 13 straight points, 2 field goals and a touchdown going into the locker room. Now, the Giants come out in the third, and they start moving the ball. And it looks like, all right, maybe they're going to go in for a score that will either tie the game. Well, not tie the game, 16-14 it was, so they could take the lead with a field goal or maybe go in on a touchdown drive. It looks like it's going well. And then they turn the ball over. Well, from that point forward, they started going with more 3 wide receivers instead of the 2 tight ends because they saw the game flow adjust. Now all the momentum was with the Saints. The crowd was getting incredibly loud in the Superdome. They had over 70,000 people in there, and they were hitting 100 decibels, which, by the way, is like the sound of a subway train if you put your ear right next to it. That's how loud 100 decibels is. And the Giants decided they needed more speed on the field for the potential of explosive plays. So they got away from their 2 tight end look, which was so effective early because of the game flow. They made an adjustment to the game flow. And of course, they kept giving the ball away. 4 consecutive turnovers coming out of halftime. So they were cooked. In terms of the defense, the Saints were all about getting rid of the ball quickly. You know, by the way, the Saints only had 1 play from scrimmage of 20 yards or more. It was the 87-yard catch and run to Shaheed. Every other play was under 20 yards. And usually at the end of a game, when you look at plays of 20 yards or more, if you get 5 or 6, that's a really good game for a team. If you have none or just 1, usually that's really, really bad. Well, the Giants had 1, and the Saints had 1. So the Saints were all about quick release and, of course, finding the holes in the Giants' cushion in the back 7 to move the chains, to get those first downs, to get into scoring range. But let's not kid ourselves. The Giants' 5 turnovers did an awful lot to hand that game to them on a silver platter. What bothered me more than anything with the Giants' pass rush, it wasn't just the no sacks. It was 1 quarterback hit. Only 1. They had 12 on Justin Herbert. And they had 1 quarterback hit on Spencer Rattler. That bothered me. I would like to have seen more finish from the pass rush. And I know you don't want to get the roughing the passer call because the refs are going to be quick to throw those flags. Whatever. Quickly, Isaac says Dart yelled at Hyatt because he didn't block downfield on a run. Yeah, that's, again, leadership, maturity, the kind of stuff that you paid Wilson and Winston to do to help guide Dart. Isaac, you're helping make the case. Nice job. Allison, here's my logical positive suggestion for coaching. Study the 2007 version of Coughlin. Accountability, ownership, found a way to publicly shift his approach to generate new results with the team. I always believe that going back into winning history can be a wonderful tool to enhance your current position. Allison, Bill Belichick often went back to his Giants roots when he was in New England during the dynasty era. In fact, one of his favorite things to do was to pull out tapes of the Giants defense and show them how Carl Banks was a prototype strong side linebacker of his time. And he would constantly show them. Now, LT is a different story, because even if you show them films of LT, nobody can do what LT did. He was just one of a kind. But you could show their linebackers, the Patriots backers, tapes of Carl Banks and say, look, this is how you're supposed to do it. Try to mimic Carl Banks. You got a better chance of doing that. Not that Carl Banks was anything less than spectacular. Again, the prototype of his time. But you got a chance at least to mimic him. You can't mimic LT. LT was just one of a kind. Greatest defensive player of all time. Did things that nobody else could do. So it wouldn't serve any purpose to necessarily show them LT tapes and say mimic him. You can't mimic him. He's one of a kind. Okay, MB Goblin says, haha, Paul, sorry, I'll refrain from the C word. Good job. C Spires says, why cannot build a good team around quarterback? Why cannot draft playmakers on team besides Neighbors? Is Scatterbo a playmaker? Is Theo Johnson a playmaker? Scatterbo's their leading rusher. Has done a really nice job with that. Tyrone Tracy, who's been hurt. Last year as a rookie, had over 1,000 combined yards from scrimmage. Theo Johnson caught 2 touchdown passes the other day. Chris, I think I've given you enough right there. Chris says, why do we think wide receivers outside of Neighbors be good, not good last year? Well, again, the only answer to that is, why didn't they enhance the wide receiver room with what? With what? The free agent list, we already told you, the second highest free agent receiver this past year was Slayton. You didn't have many options with the money you had and with who was available. So if you want to tell me draft somebody, well, what the Giants do in the draft? Are you happy they took Abdul Carter? Are you happy they made the trade up to get Jackson Dart? Are you happy they drafted Darius Alexander, who's now starting to show? Are you happy they drafted Cam Scatterboo? Are you happy they drafted Marcus Bowe, who a lot of people seem to be really happy with for a fifth-round choice? So where were you going to draft this other really good receiver? Sixth round? Well, seventh round? Where were you going to get this receiver that was going to make a difference? Real quick, Pete F, coaching adjustments should have taken away the quick passes and forced the quarterback to hold the ball longer. Pete, that's the one thing that I've always advocated. Again, this is my frame of reference. I told you before, I'm about a physical attacking defense. I'm about major league contact. I'm one who really wants my secondary to get in people's grill. You can't use press coverage on every play. You can't use bump and run on every play. You have to mix it up. But I do believe if, my preference goes back to things that Belichick would do or Spags would do or John Fox would do. These were all guys I had tremendous respect for and learned a lot from. If I've got corners like Tay Banks and like Paulson Adibo who have size, strength, and physicality, I'm going to try to use them in physical situations as much as possible. Chuck guys off their routes. You get 5 yards to do whatever you want to do to a wide receiver. So I'm with you, Pete. Anytime I see an offense that's going to go quick game and tell the quarterback, just get rid of that ball really fast because we want to neutralize the other team's pass rush. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to really chuck those receivers. I'm going to jam them. I'm going to bump and run them. I'm going to redirect them off their routes. I'm going to do everything I can to disrupt their timing. Because if the quarterback's not going to give me a chance to get to him, I'm going to ruin his targets. I'm not going to let his targets get to where they got to be so that he can throw a perfectly timed pass into their hands. That's what I'm going to do, Pete. But that's me. I'm not the defensive coordinator. I'm just an announcer. But my football background, that's my preference. Pete F says, allowed the rush to get the quarterback. Well, yeah, again, throw off the routes. The timing is now poor. They won't get the completion. Or for that matter, if he's got to hold the ball, the rush does get to him. Yeah, I understand. That's basic football. If you're willing to be that aggressive with your guys in the back. And quite frankly, also with your linebackers. Because your linebackers can do a little bit to throw guys off of their routes as well. Finally, MB Goblin says, I agree, free agency for wide receivers this year was very bleak, and we had other positions that desperately needed help. That is absolutely true. Folks, we've done, Pete F says, that's coaching adjustments. Well, I wouldn't adjust to that kind of style, by the way, Pete. That's the way I would play from the get-go. That wouldn't be so much an adjustment. That would often be my base style, week in and week out. I would make adjustments away from that if necessary, because, again, matchups do create different problems and different variations on what you have to do. You can't do the same thing every time. But my base formation or my base scheme, my base philosophy would absolutely be about beating other guys up. You know, I very much love what Bill Belichick did to the Buffalo Bills in Super Bowl 25 when Mark Collins thoroughly abused Reed. Okay? I'm going to let GRC get one more in here. Pete F says he agrees. And GRC says, really need the defense to get the job done this week. Keep the game close. Give us a chance at the end. Folks, that's going to do it for this edition of the Big Blue Breakdown Live. The Giants take on the Philadelphia Eagles Thursday Night Football at MetLife Stadium this week. Tomorrow morning, we will post the 3 key matchups for the Giants that they really need to focus and concentrate on. Individual matchups that would be very important to their chances to somehow, some way, try to pull off this upset against a heavily favored Eagles team that is 4-1 and has owned the Giants, well, for the better part of over a decade. So that'll do it for tonight's program. Again, keep it tuned to the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel and media network for your Giants coverage. Again, Big Blue Breakdown tomorrow. 3 key matchups for the Giants-Eagles game. But for the Big Blue Breakdown Live, I'm Paul Dottino. We will see you again next Wednesday and take all of your calls, your chats, and your video calls. We didn't get any calls or video calls tonight, but maybe we'll get them next week. Until then, so long, everybody. Appreciate you for sticking with us tonight.